Today, Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh will hear his first arguments as a member of the nation's highest court. CBS's Laura Podesta reports on what else Justice Kavanaugh can expect during his first week on the job. Here's a live shot right now outside of the courthouse.
Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh starts his work at the nation's highest court today. Last night, during a ceremonial swearing in at the White House, President Trump apologized for the partisan fighting that led up to his confirmation.
What happened to the Kavanaugh family violates every notion of fairness, decency, and due process.
The newest member of the Supreme Court will begin his official work by hearing arguments in a handful of cases, among them longer prison terms for repeat offenders and Homeland Security's authority to detain certain immigrants here illegally.
My goal is to be a great justice for all Americans.
But it's unclear if Kavanaugh can rest easy on the bench. The top Democrat in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, said she would file a Freedom of Information Act on what was in the FBI supplemental background investigation into Kavanaugh. The results could be made public before the midterms, though Republicans don't seem to be concerned about how the investigation could impact the election.
What I think this has done for us is provide the kind of adrenaline shot that we had not been able to figure out how to achieve in any other way.
Meantime, Kavanaugh's newly hired law clerks are all women, a first for a Supreme Court justice. Laura Podesta, CBS News, New York.
In his remarks at the White House last night, Kavanaugh said that he held no bitterness over the confirmation fight during which he was accused of sexual assault by 3 women. MSU Billings political science professor Dr. Jason Atkins says Americans will be watching to see if Kavanaugh's contentious personality that came to the forefront during his confirmation hearing will emerge in his rulings as well.
What is his demeanor on the bench? How does he question people who come before the court and argue cases? So that's something that people, I think, will be on the look for.
And also in this morning's headlines, Hurricane Michael continues to gain strength as it moves toward the United States. The storm is on track to make landfall in the Florida Panhandle tomorrow. By then, it could be a Category 3 hurricane with wind speeds of well over 110 miles an hour. And there's still no word on the cause of the limousine crash that left 20 people dead in upstate New York. Yesterday, officials said the vehicle failed a state inspection last month and shouldn't have been on the road. They also said its driver wasn't licensed to operate it because it was so large that it was classified as a bus. Now closer to home, there are places to mine gold across the West, but the border of Yellowstone National Park isn't one of them. That's the message from Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke as he signs a 20-year moratorium on mining near the park. MTN's Chet Lehman has more from Montana's Paradise Valley.
Far from the turmoil of Washington, D.C., Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke gathered with several members of the Yellowstone Gateway Business Coalition, not far from where a proposed gold mine would have been.
Public lands is not a Republican or a Democrat issue, it's an American issue. And there are some things that are more important than politics.
Those gathered pointed to the importance of nearby Yellowstone National Park and the Yellowstone River downstream from this gathering. Secretary Zinke declared this place special.
I graduated with a degree in geology and I'm a pro-mining guy. I love hard rock, but there's places to mine and there's places not to mine. And you have to look at the American conservation ethic of best science, best practices, greatest good, longest term.
All the work completed today focusing on this, the Yellowstone River, but it didn't just happen overnight. In fact, when Ryan Zinke first became involved in this, he was Congressman Zinke. Today, signing it as Secretary of the Interior Zinke, using what he says is the full power of his office.
Today, we're going to put at peace, within the extent of my power as the Secretary of Interior, a 20-year moratorium. If I could make it permanent, I would. Following described National Forest System lands are hereby withdrawn from location and entry under the United States mine laws. Signed, Ryan Zinke, Secretary of Interior.
Zinke noted a permanent decision would have to come from Congress. In the Paradise Valley, Chet Lehman, MTN News.
Supporters and opponents of the mining ban were also on hand to voice their own opinions. Among the opponents, the CEO of Lucky Minerals.
New technology allows us to have methods and processes that won't harm the environment. We have plenty of engineering controls that go into the process of mining.
This isn't just my backyard or our backyard, it's America's backyard.
A bill is currently moving through the Senate that would change Secretary Zinke's mining ban for the Yellowstone area from a temporary ban to a permanent one. In this election year, Montana has only 3 contested races for statewide office on the ballot. While the U.S. House and Senate races are grabbing nearly all the attention, the 3rd statewide race is flying well below the political radar, that being the race for the clerk of the Montana Supreme Court. MTN's chief political reporter Mike Dennison brings us a closer look at this contest and why it matters.
The office of Clerk of the Montana Supreme Court has been an elected position since Montana's statehood in 1889, and this year it's an open seat for the first time in 30 years. Longtime clerk Ed Smith is retiring, and 3 men are competing for the position: Republican Bowen Greenwood, Democrat Rex Rank, and Libertarian Roger Roots. The court clerk maintains the High Court's records and makes them available to the public. Here's how Rank describes the job.
And we protect that record for the public's use and the court's use. We're also the ones who maintain the role of attorneys. And essentially, though, what we do is we deal with the public every day. We're the public's face of the court.
Rank has worked in the office for 24 years, including 23 years as deputy clerk, and is running on his experience. Greenwood works now as spokesman for the State Public Service Commission and has also worked for many Republican candidates' campaigns and the state Republican Party.
I have a long record of work in the public information field. My whole career is about information that belongs to the people of Montana and making sure it gets to them.
Both men say they'd like to do more to increase electronic filing and access to court records. The race is also partisan, but Rank, the Democrat, says it shouldn't be.
The role of the clerk of the Supreme Court is one that should keep a focus on serving the public and keep party politics out of it. Politics do not belong in the operation of the clerk of the Supreme Court.
Greenwood agrees that the work itself is nonpartisan, but says being a Republican is part of who he is.
There are a large number of Montanans who want to vote for someone like-minded. And it may be for an office like this one, or county treasurer, or something that doesn't seem very partisan, but they still like to know that a person who shares their values is in that office.
Libertarian Roots says if he's elected, he would maximize the rights of individuals in the document filing process. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Absentee ballots for this race and all other Montana races this year will be sent out in the mail this Friday. And if you're one of 90,000 Montana residents who received a mailer over the past few days containing a partially filled out absentee ballot registration form, it's important to know the forms are completely legitimate and legal. They were sent out by the New American Jobs Fund, which is a partnership between the League of Conservation Voters and United Steelworkers. League of Conservation Voters spokeswoman Alyssa Roberts says the forms were sent to help people make the voting process easier. All of the information filled out on these forms come from the Secretary of State's public voter file. If you get one and choose to fill it out, Roberts says you can return it to your local county election office. This coming Saturday night on MTN, the candidates running for U.S. Senate face off in their final televised debate prior to Election Day. As this year's election draws near, we decided it would be interesting to dig through the Q2 archives to see what issues Montanans were debating some 30 years ago. It turns out there are some of the very same issues up for discussion today.
From the news station, this is a Montana Campaign 88 special. Tonight,
in the 1988 race for governor, Montanans had a feeling that the Treasure State was not living up to its name. Opportunity was drying up, enough so that the topic was a focal point during MTN's candidate forum broadcast statewide.
Montanans are tired of seeing their friends and neighbors pack up and have to leave the state.
They are concerned that their children, upon graduation from school, must also leave Montana to find job opportunities.
Businesses boarded up on main streets across Montana, and farmers and ranchers facing foreclosure.
Montanans were making up their minds between two political veterans. Former Governor Tom Judge, who had previously held the governor's chair from 1973 to 1981 and was attempting a political comeback, and Haver Republican Stan Stevens, an accomplished state legislative leader. How to bring that opportunity back was a point of distinction.
We need a partnership between business, labor, the university system, and state government.
Now, the private sector can do a good job for Montana, but they've been inhibited by onerous rules and regulations.
As was how to pay for it.
Mr. Stevens, your opponent's jobs program, which you just mentioned, relies heavily on the use of coal tax trust money.
I don't have any objection to taking a look at a reasonable proposal to use it, but I think there are other opportunities facing Montana where we simply don't have to go to Helena and look for another sugar bowl every time.
Back then, as now, Montanans had their focus on that delicate balance between protecting the environment and a secure economy.
We do have good environmental laws in Montana. I signed most of those laws.
Many of those are starting to be repealed or moved back to what is a reasonable level. That's one of the reasons that we're looking for economic development in this state that allows business to orderly develop the environment and orderly develop our natural resources.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. I'm sorry we ran out of time on that question. We'll be back in just a moment.
And Stan Stevens went on to win the 1988 governor's race, defeating Tom Judge by 21,000 votes, in the process becoming the first Republican to reside in the governor's mansion in some 20 years.